Incredible journey, man arrives at hospital pregnant, revealing an amazing life-changing secret. John stepped through the automatic doors of the local hospital, his heart pounding like a drum echoing through the sterile hallways. Ordinary visits here typically celebrated new life, joy, and healing. But for John, it marked the beginning of an incredible journey that would upend everything he had ever known. Pregnancy wasn't just for women, yet here he was a 35-year-old blue-collar worker carrying the weight of a reality that felt both absurd and electrifying. As he felt the hum of fluorescent lights above him, he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on him, judging, questioning, disbelieving. The town of Oak Hollow wore its traditions like badges. Men were rugged, tough, and providers, while women nurtured and cared. Yet deep down, a stirring urgency propelled him forward. Today, he would challenge every notion of masculinity that had ever been ingrained in him. He took a breath and squeezed his wife Marissa's hand. Her unwavering support was his anchor against the rising tide of doubt. Weeks rolled by, morphing his life into a storm of scrutiny. His once nurturing hometown became a landscape filled with doubtful glances. With each murmured conversation, "Did you hear about John?" a tightness gripped his chest. He felt like a stranger in his own life, a betrayal against the unspoken rules that governed their close-knit community. The laughter of his children and the warmth of Marissa's love couldn't shield him from the harsh reality of acceptance. And then there was his father. A former military man, John had been raised to embody strength, resilience, and stoicism. The tension between them crackled whenever they shared a meal. The man who had taught him that vulnerability was weakness now stood before him, at a loss for words. "Why, son? Why would you choose this?" The despair in his father's voice was a knife twisting in his gut. "I didn't choose it," John replied, his voice cracking. "It chose me." As Marissa wrestled with her own fears, managing the emotional turmoil became an emotional tightrope. They loved each other dearly, but the weight of societal judgment pressed heavily upon them. At the city council meeting, John found himself standing to speak, his heart racing like never before. This was his moment to unveil a truth that could shift perceptions if only they could see past their traditions. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As he spoke, the audience grew still, hanging on to every word. The reality of his rare condition unwrapped like a gift, revealing a powerful narrative around love, acceptance, and fragility. Would this revelation be enough to bridge the gap between him and the town he had cherished? As he finished, silence hung heavy in the air like a thick fog. Standing there, he felt a mixture of vulnerability and strength. This was the moment where everything could change. But even if his story resonated, would they choose unity over prejudice? As whispers of doubt started to swirl again, John stood resolute, heart racing. Would he find acceptance, or would tradition tear them apart? The room fell into a pregnant pause, and John felt as if time had stopped. Faces turned towards him, a mix of curiosity and skepticism reflecting in their eyes. He could see the contours of disbelief etched on their brows. Anxiety pinched at his stomach, but he stood firm, channeling all his energy into a hopeful light as he scanned the crowd. Friends, neighbors, and even those who he knew were critical of his choice. Marissa shifted beside him, her silent support radiating strength. He nodded to her, a drop of assurance in his ocean of uncertainty. "I'm not asking for anyone to understand this. Just to accept it." Murmurs began to ripple through the audience. It was tangible, their thoughts ricocheting off the walls of the hall and back towards him. How could this be? What does it mean for all of us? These questions hung in the air, unspoken yet palpable. Each syllable felt like a weight lifting off his shoulders, but with it came the realization that he had tossed a stone into a pond, and the ripples would only grow. Then one voice broke through, an older woman from the back. You think you're special, huh? Or that this is just a game? Her accusation struck like a bolt, igniting sparks among the others. John's heart ached, but he pressed on. No. It's not about being special. It's about love. My family. And yes, my experience as a father also. Listening for the first time, it felt as though each word was an offering, a chance for others to understand that his journey was not to defy the community but to expand it. Another voice chimed in, this time a younger man whose gaze was thoughtful rather than scornful. But isn't there another way? Why not adopt? Why force this on yourself? Their questions felt heavy, mounting like snow on a sloped roof, ready to collapse. John had prepared for this. Adoption is beautiful. Absolutely. But my journey led me here. This isn't about forcing my beliefs on anyone, it's about sharing my truth. What if we all just considered each other's paths? He could feel the mood loosening slightly, like the wind changed direction. Yet, just as hope grew, he saw a familiar face, a childhood friend, Marcus, step away, a scowl twisting his features. John's heart sank. Marcus, First John began, but Marcus cut him off sharply. There's no place for this in our lives. You're turning everything upside down. He shook his head, voice rising like a thunderous cloud. You're confused, John? This isn't right. The air thickened again as the crowd shifted uncomfortably. In that moment, John felt the breaths of the audience quickening, the tension tightening around them like a vice. Would Marcus' words spiral into more disbelief? Here's the thing, John said, injecting raw sincerity into his voice. It's not about confusion. It's about understanding and love. I'm still the same guy who played catch with you in the park. I can still be a great father, regardless of how that looks. Our children will see love, not limitation. A flicker of realization softened some expressions. He could see the gears turning, doubts starting to fade. In that moment, John dared to hope. If we can open our hearts, maybe this can lead to a deeper conversation, one that expands who we are as a community. As he finished, he saw a glimmer of something in the crowd, a woman wiping a tear at the front. Could it be compassion breaking through the walls? Just as he thought, the air lightened again. A loud clap interrupted his thoughts. Enough with this nonsense. Another man yelled, storming to the front, face a furious red. You're ruining everything we've built. The chills swept back in. In the eyes of his town, a battle raged. Acceptance versus rejection. Please, John whispered, hard hammering, give me a chance with that. The ground beneath his feet shifted once more, and he held his breath, counting the heartbeats that echoed in the heavy silence. Would they turn their backs, or could his fragile hopes spark a change? The room felt electric, a storm brewing as the tension mounted. Just one moment could tip these scales forever. A heavy silence hung in the air, suffocating and thick. John felt the weight of it pressing down on him, heart racing. He searched the faces in the crowd, seeking any sign of connection, but all he found was guardedness, perhaps even resentment. The hostile energy from the man who had just shouted echoed in John's mind, and he wondered if everything he had fought for was slipping away. Come on, people! Let us not forget why we're all here. Marissa finally stepped forward, voice cutting through the tension with a clarity that was soothing yet firm. This isn't just about John. It's about what our community can become. It's about family and connection. Her eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge her. The crowd stood still, breathing collectively, as if they were afraid to break the spell she had cast. It sparked a flicker of hope in John's chest. Thank you, Marissa, he said, his voice trembling with gratitude. A little boy in the front row tugged at his mother's sleeve, eyes wide and innocent. Mom, why can't he be a dad? He seems nice. The words were simple yet powerful, coming from a child who had no filter, who hadn't built the walls of preconception just yet. A few snickers rippled through the crowd, but they were lighter, almost amused by how refreshingly honest the boy was. It was a small spark, yet it wrapped around John's heart like a warm blanket. Exactly. John jumped in. We all want the same things for our families: a safe home, a loving environment. Our differences can teach us, not divide us. He pointed toward the boy, whose mother was now blushing but smiling. Kids know love. They understand that it isn't about appearances or norms. It's about the people who care. Marcus, still scowling, caught John's eye, his arms crossed tightly against his chest. You're asking us to rewrite our understanding of family, he shot back. What's next? Where does it end? It starts with acceptance, John replied with an earnestness that rose within him. We're not dismantling anything. We're building a new path. But we have to be willing to walk it together. Some expressions began to soften, doubt creeping slowly away. John focused on Marcus, pouring everything into his eyes. You know me better than anyone here. Remember all those times? A surge of nostalgia flickered across Marcus' face, the memory of laughter and sun-drenched afternoons. A moment of vulnerability stirred, just for the briefest instant. Your choice doesn't change who you are, Marcus begrudgingly admitted, but the tone was different, curious rather than defensive. Still, it's unconventional. Unconventional can bring about great things, John said, voice steady and rising with passion. Change is uncomfortable, but it can also open doors. What would our children think if they saw us learning from one another instead of rejecting each other? A middle-aged woman from the back nodded, her voice shaking slightly. What if it's not about us? What if, in our hesitations, we're holding back something beautiful for the next generation? A ripple of agreement stirred through the crowd. John felt a crack in the wall, the first hint of a shift in perspective. Yet just as a glimmer of hope spread, another voice erupted. When will it stop? This madness can't continue. John's breath caught. The dissent was palpable, as another shadow loomed over the moment. It was a battle, still far from over, and the stakes felt impossibly high. Please, he cried, voice breaking with emotion. Let us find a way to truly support one another. We can build a future worth believing in. With every heartbeat, the tension twisted tighter in the room. Would they ever learn to see past their reservations? And just when John thought he might find a breakthrough, the tension snapped, plunging the room into uncertainty once again. The flicker of resolve within him fought against the rising tide of doubt. In that instant, his hope hung by a thread. Would it hold? Marissa squeezed his hand, grounding him. Their futures were intertwined, and together, they would face whatever storm lay ahead. He took a deep breath, knowing it all came down to this moment. Would he bring them together, or would the rift only deepen? What more could he say to sway them toward understanding? The room held its breath as John's plea echoed in the air. Time seemed to stretch, every eye fixed on him, every heart weighing the gravity of the moment. He felt the pulse of uncertainty course through the crowd, mingling with hope and fear. A small part of him wondered if he could indeed usher in a change, but that seed of doubt was dangerous, creeping around the edges of his resolve. Marissa leaned in closer, her presence a steady anchor. Remember that we're more than our fears, she said softly, her voice just above a whisper. We are parents, brothers, sisters, friends. We have the power to shape the future. John turned to the crowd again, searching their faces for the willingness to listen, to connect. I understand that you're scared, he spoke with urgency. Change can feel like a storm, but storms pass. His voice trembled, but he pressed on, fueled by the sincerity of his words. We don't have to weather it alone. We can stand together in a new light, where acceptance replaces fear. In the back, a young woman with bright red hair raised her hand, trembling slightly. What if it doesn't work? What if we open ourselves to something that breaks us even further? The sound of sobs echoed softly behind her, and a few heads nodded in agreement. John caught her eye, remembering similar questions when he began this journey. What if it does work? He replied gently. What if we discover parts of ourselves we never knew existed? What if, instead of breaking apart, we come together, stronger and more connected than before? A murmur ran through the crowd, a ripple of contemplation sparked by his words. They were grappling, each individual wrestling with their understanding of family, of love, of identity. Children shifted in their seats, their innocent curiosity weaving a thread through the adult debates, reminding everyone what was at stake. "Mom, let him be a dad," the little boy chimed in again, amplifying the tension with his innocent conviction. "He just loves us like you do." Laughter broke out in small pockets. It was fragile but genuine, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. People began to shift, their expressions softening, the tension wavering. John felt hope unfurling carefully, like a flower hesitantly blooming in the early spring. "Maybe we can start with one simple step," Marissa proposed, her voice weaving through the still air. "What if we shared our stories? What if we spoke about our fears and our dreams?" "That's a start," John agreed, his heart racing at the prospect. "We have so many voices in this room. What if we each shared who we are? Who we love? Maybe that connection can heal what feels broken." Marcus uncrossed his arms, slowly shifting his stance. "And what if we discover we're not so different after all?" he muttered, almost to himself. "Exactly," John said, emboldened by the little victories he saw unfolding in the crowd. "There's power in our stories. Together, we can redefine what family means in this community." Around him, faces began to nod with tentative acceptance. Yet just as hope seemed poised on the edge of a breakthrough, the doors swung open with a loud bang. A group of newcomers burst in, stirring an unexpected commotion. "Did we miss the discussion?" The leader of the group laughed, an edge of skepticism in his voice. "Sounds like a wild party in here." John's heart sank as he registered the skepticism in their eyes. Was this the moment he would lose everything? Darkness loomed once more, threatening to squash the flickering light. As the newcomers questioned everything they had just built in those fleeting moments, John realized he had to rise again, to battle not only for his acceptance but for the very hope he'd ignited in the hearts around him. Would he find the strength to embrace yet another challenge, or would the tide of doubt drown him and everything they'd just begun to build? The energy in the room shifted, tension thick as fog. The newcomers, still laughing, scanned the faces of those who had just begun to bond over their fears and hopes. John felt like a balloon losing air, every bit of confidence deflating as the leader's words echoed in his mind. Skepticism was a powerful force, and he feared that it could undo everything they had carefully crafted together. "Just give us a moment," Marissa interjected, stepping in front of John. Her voice was strong, unwavering. "We're discussing how to support one another, how to embrace every part of our community." The leader looked unfazed. "Support? It sounds like you're gearing up for a pity party. You really think this can work?" His laughter hung in the air, mocking, and John felt the weight of the doubt creeping back into the room. But he couldn't let it take hold. Not now. Not after they had just begun to peel away the layers of fear. The flicker of hope still glowed, and he could feel it in Marissa's determined gaze. "I do," John replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "Because love and acceptance are stronger than fear. That's what we're building here. It's not just talk, it's a future." A murmur went through the crowd again, and John sensed a shift. Perhaps the laughter of the newcomers didn't mean they had all come to challenge him. Maybe, just maybe, they had come to open their hearts as well. "Why are we even here?" one of the newcomers called out, crossing his arms. "Do you really think we can just change everything overnight?" John took a breath, the words spilling out before he could catch himself. "Change starts small. It begins with conversation. With sharing our experiences. What if we shared our stories instead of judgments?" The young woman with bright red hair spoke again, her voice clearer this time. "You know what? If we're going to do this, let us do it right. I'll share my story if you share yours." The leader glanced at her, his smile wavering. "And why should we care about anything you have to say?" "Because we are neighbors," she said, her voice ringing with honesty. "We share more than the ground beneath our feet. We have families, struggles, and hopes just like everyone else in this room. Maybe that's what connects us." As she spoke, John caught sight of the little boy again. His innocent face gazed up at the newcomers, excitement glimmering in his eyes. "Mom, they should hear us. It's like a team. Like superheroes." John felt the laughter ripple through the room again, tensions easing, just slightly. All we need is to be brave enough to be honest, he added. Tell your doubts, tell your joys, and maybe just maybe we can find a way to march forward together. The challenge hung in the air, bold and inviting, and John searched the crowd once more. He could see flickers of hope sparkling among them, ready to ignite into flames. Okay, I'm in, shouted Marcus, stepping forward. I'll start. Cheers erupted, followed by more brave souls stepping up to share. The room felt electric with anticipation. Each story brought another layer of understanding, kicking down walls that had stood for too long. John's heart swelled as he wandered the room, witnessing shifts in energy, laughter mingling with tearful confessions. This was connection. It was messy and real and exactly what they needed. Just as the stories were being woven together, creating a tapestry of shared experiences, the door swung wide again. A familiar face stepped in, eyes wide with confusion, as if they had walked into a different world. John? Came a voice soft and hesitant. I need to talk to you. The room fell silent, all eyes on him as he turned slowly, confusion gripping him tighter than any fear had before. What could possibly be left unsaid that would alter everything they'd just begun to build? As he stood frozen, the weight of unspoken truths heavy in the air, he wondered if this conversation could be their next step toward the future or if it would bring the bricks crashing down. John blinked, trying to process who stood before him. It was his sister, Lucy, her face a mix of apprehension and urgency. He hadn't seen her in months, not since she left, chasing dreams that always seemed just out of reach. And now, here she was, staring at him as if he were a ghost. Lucy, he stammered, his heart racing. The room remained still, each person's breath caught in their throat, waiting to see what would happen next. He felt the heat of their stares, confusion swirling around him like a storm. Can we talk? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. It was softer than he remembered, lost in a sea of uncertainty. John nodded, leading her to the corner of the room, away from prying eyes. What's going on? He asked, his mind racing, trying to mask the swirl of emotions boiling inside him. I didn't know how else to tell you, she started, glancing over her shoulder as if the walls could listen. I was scared. I still am. Her words hung heavy in the air. He swallowed hard. Scared of what? His heart drummed louder, anticipation coiling tighter. I'm having a baby, John. The words spilled out, and he felt the weight of them press down on him. The world around faded, the laughter and hope extinguished. I didn't plan for this and I needed your support. John sucked in a breath, the confession hitting him like a bolt of lightning. A baby? But how? Lucy, you've been gone living your life. The disbelief colored his tone, and he could feel the flicker of concern rising in his chest. I know, she cried, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I was busy trying to figure everything out. And then it just happened. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I thought you'd judge me. Judgment? The word echoed painfully in his mind. Wasn't that what he and everyone else had been fighting against today? He wanted to promise her that it was okay, just as they were trying to embrace everyone else's stories. But inside, doubt threatened to creep in again. Lucy, I could never, he began, but the words fell flat as he studied her face. The fear there was raw and real, like a wound that refused to heal. Suddenly, the room seemed far away again. Everything they had just built, the connections forming, all started to feel fragile. His sister's voice cut through his swirling thoughts. I need someone in my corner, and I want that to be you. He exhaled, realization sinking in. She was reaching out, desperate for connection just like everyone else in this room. It wasn't about judging her choices. It was about embracing her truth, supporting her, even if it scared him. Okay, he said finally, reaching out to clasp her hand. I'm here for you. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out together. A small, tentative smile broke through her anxious expression. The rush of fear settled slightly, replaced by a spark of hope. But just then, the laughter from the shared stories echoed back into his mind. He turned, glancing at the group still buzzing with energy, their faces illuminated with the warmth of open hearts. John? Marissa called softly from the group, concern etched across her features. Everything okay? He hesitated, wrestling the weight of conflicting choices. He could bury this new truth away, keep it private, but could he really? The community had sparked a flame of honesty today. Could he stifle that for his own comfort? I just found out my sister is pregnant, he finally said, feeling the collective breath of the room catch again. A mix of surprise and compassion washed over the crowd. And now I need your help too. Silence fell, then murmurs began to ripple. Yes. Let us all figure this out together, someone from the back called out enthusiastically. More voices chimed in, as support poured from every corner. Underneath John's anxiety thrummed something deeper, a sense of unity wrapped in vulnerability. But as the conversation started anew, Lucy gripped John's arm tighter. What if I can't do this? What if I mess up? He met her wide eyes, determination solidifying within him. You won T. We'll make mistakes, we'll learn. We're all in this. Together. As she began to smile, a familiar dread crept in. Would he really have the strength to support her? The fate of their journey together could hang in the balance. Can we do this? He asked, both of them glancing around the room filled with newfound allies. A chorus of nods and encouragement lifted the air, but deep down, John felt a quake of uncertainty beneath it all. Little did they know, the real challenges were yet to come, and the connections they forged today could either strengthen their path or unravel the fragile web they had just begun to weave. What happens when the weight of those challenges begins to shadow their hopes? He wondered silently, the fear of the unknown settling like a heavy mist, and he knew that this was only the beginning. John stepped back from the group, trying to catch his breath. The solidarity in the room was palpable, yet the uncertainty gnawed at him. It was one thing to agree to support Lucy, but another to truly understand what that meant. A baby would change everything. As conversations flowed, he could still feel Lucy's presence next to him, a small bubble of vulnerability and hope. Her fingers were interlaced with his, a silent pact forged between them. He could see snippets of the event unfolding around him, moments of laughter, shared stories, and compassion that he could almost touch. But then doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What if they see me as less, as someone who couldn't handle life? His heart raced at the idea of judgment, not just for Lucy, but for himself. Hey, Lucy's voice broke through his spiral of thoughts. She looked so small, yet so strong, filled with maternal instinct that seemed to radiate from her. Are you all right? Yeah, just thinking. John hesitated. About everything. And how we'll manage it all. Lucy's gaze softened. We will. You just said we'll face things together. Right. He nodded, drawing in breath and exhaling doubts. I just want you to know I'm here, but we'll need help. I don't want to fall short for you. We can't do this alone. She smiled, a hint of gratitude in her eyes. And we won't have to. Not with this group. They're ready to stand by us. A sudden cheer erupted as someone in the crowd proposed a baby shower to celebrate Lucy. The spontaneous suggestion caught on like wildfire, with ideas sparking and laughter ringing out. John watched, his heart warmed by the supportive energy enveloping them. This was the community they had fought for, where each individual was interwoven through shared stories, struggles, and victories. The moment felt surreal. How could a simple gathering of friends evolve into a foundation upon which they could all stand? What are you thinking? Lucy asked, her brow furrowing slightly. Just thinking about how quickly things can change. One moment you feel lost, and the next you're part of something enormous. A flicker of fear crossed Lucy's face. Do you really think I can do this? Be a mom? His heart clenched at her uncertainty. You're already doing it. You're making plans, sharing your truth. Just look at everyone, how they want to help you. That's not a failure, it's strength. A silence stretched between them as her worries hung in the air. John squeezed her hand tighter. I have my moments too. But together, we'll create something beautiful. Will it be enough? She whispered, almost shyly. Enough isn't the goal, he replied. It's about trying. Just like we're doing now. Every step will be a part of our journey. As they exchanged smiles, John felt a wave of excitement wash over him. He could almost see the threads of connection weaving tighter, stitching their fears into a blanket of shared love. Suddenly, the laughter and celebration swelled again, and his gaze drifted to Marissa, who was rallying the crowd to contribute ideas for Lucy's baby shower. It struck him that this was not just about Lucy anymore. It was a new chapter for them all, a shared commitment to grow together. But amidst the joy, shadows lingered on the horizon of uncertainty. What would happen when the reality of parenthood came crashing in, with all its unexpected trials? John swallowed, unease settling back in. He needed a plan. A way to navigate through the storm and keep Lucy afloat. "Hey, let us talk about what we need to do next," he suggested. Lucy nodded, and together they began to push back against the looming doubts, mapping out strategies, seeking assistance, and uncovering their fears. But little did they know, the hurdles that approached were greater than they could imagine. A chance encounter awaited them just around the corner, a moment that would either solidify their bond or fracture it irreparably. Are we ready for what comes next? John thought, the weight of looming responsibility resting uncomfortably on his shoulders. As their plans began to take shape, one thing was clear: this journey had only just begun. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere sparkled with hope and laughter, a stark contrast to the doubts swirling in John's mind. The group buzzed with excitement, throwing around names for the baby and discussing themes for the shower. "Lucy, what color scheme do you want?" Marissa shouted from across the room, her cheerful voice cutting through the conversations. "I love pastels. Light blue or soft pink?" Lucy responded, her smile radiant. John watched as Lucy animatedly joined the surrounding chatter. He felt a warmth spreading through him, her joy igniting a flicker of hope that the community they had built would be sufficient to hold them up. "You okay?" a voice broke in, drawing his attention. It was Tom, his good friend, stepping closer with concern etched on his face. "Honestly? A little overwhelmed," John admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't expect everything to happen so fast." Tom clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, it's a lot, but you don't have to carry this alone, man. Everyone's here for both of you." John nodded, but a shadow lingered in his heart. "I know, but sometimes I wonder if I'm ready for this, for Lucy, for the baby." "You're going to be a fantastic partner and a dad," Tom reassured him before stepping away, leaving John with his swirling thoughts. As the night continued, announcements punctuated the air, plans taking shape with a life of their own. Yet the question hung heavy: would they truly be enough for everything thrown their way? "Let us head outside for a moment," Lucy suggested, pulling John toward the back patio. The cool night air hit them, refreshing and vibrant. Strings of fairy lights sparkled above, setting a magical scene. "Better?" she asked, nudging him lightly. "Much," he sighed, leaning against the railing. "It just feels like there's so much pressure. I want everything to be perfect for you and the baby." Lucy turned to face him, her expression serious but tender. "Nothing is ever perfect, John. It's about trying our best. Look at all these people. They want to help because they believe in us. We just need to be honest about our fears, our hopes." His heart swelled at her strength, resonating with her honesty. "I want to be honest," he said, searching her eyes. "About how scared I am." "Scared is okay," she replied steadfastly. "Just don't let it paralyze you. Let it drive us forward. We can label the fears, tackle them a bit at a time." "Yeah, okay," he said, instilled with newfound determination. "We can write them down, sort through what's real and what's just noise in our heads." "Exactly." She smiled, and the warmth of that smile chased the chill away. A sudden noise broke their moment. A car door slammed. John turned to see a figure approaching them through the dim light, a face he recognized but hadn't seen in a while. "Jenna?" he murmured, his heart sinking a little. The tension between him and his sister had always been a tightrope. Lucy turned, her eyes widening slightly. "What's she doing here?" Jenna looked worn yet resolute as she stepped closer, a storm brewing in her eyes. Hey, I needed to talk to you, both of you, she said, her voice firm yet uncertain. Confusion thrummed in John's veins. Now? What's going on? The air crackled with unspoken words as Jenna drew a breath. In that moment, John's heart raced not with anticipation of his sister's support, but with the fear of what was coming next. Jenna's words spilled out, thick with tension. It's about Mom, and the baby. Time seemed to freeze, waiting for the revelation that could shatter or strengthen everything. John clenched Lucy's hand tightly, bracing himself for the impact. What did Jenna mean? As he stared into his sister's eyes, questions swirled within him. Would this be the bridge to healing, or a crash that would threaten to sever their ties even more? The weight of uncertainty pressed on him, and John couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would be the same after this moment. Jenna's gaze flickered between her brother and Lucy, a flood of emotions darkening her features. The tension hung thick in the air, wrapping around them like a smothering blanket. Mom? John said, barely above a whisper, his heart pounding in his chest. The last time they had spoken, things had dissolved into anger, slamming doors and shouts that echoed long after the conversation had ended. Yeah, Jenna's voice trembled just slightly. She's not doing well. I thought you both should know because of the baby. The words hit John like a punch in the gut. Did their mother's condition really have to do with his child? What do you mean? Lucy asked, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath it. She's been sick, and she's scared, Jenna replied, her voice wavering as her own fears seeped through. Now that you're about to have a baby, she wants to make things right, to be in your lives, but she thinks she might not have the time. John felt everything in him scrape raw. He had grown up dealing with his mother's erratic behavior, the highs and lows that had driven wedges in their family. And now, she waited in a hospital room, pleading for forgiveness just when he was forging his own path. Is she asking for me? John breathed, his voice cracking under the emotion. He had craved her approval for so long, but past had clawed at him. She wants to see you, Jenna replied softly. But I also need you to understand this is as much about you. If we don't give her a chance, we might miss out on what could finally heal us. What about the baby? John said, panic creeping into his tone. How can I trust her again? Lucy stepped closer, her presence a calming force. John, this is so much to process. But remember the conversation we just had about fears and facing them? Maybe this is an opportunity for that healing. Caught in a wave of conflicting emotions, John glanced at Lucy, her eyes reflecting unwavering support. He wanted to tell her that accepting their mother was complicated. Words tumbled around in his mind like loose change. What do I do? He finally whispered, looking at Jenna with desperation. Come with me, Jenna said, her eyes pleading. Give her a chance for once. You can't control what happens, but you can show up. For the baby, for us, and for yourself. John looked toward Lucy, who nodded encouragingly, squeezing his hand tighter. Her faith in him felt like a tether pulling him into the moment, into a decision he was not ready to make. Okay, he said, heart racing with uncertainty. I'll go. A shaky breath escaped him, the decision setting off a spiral of emotions: fear, hope, resentment, and maybe even the chance to start fresh. As they walked back inside, John watched the laughter and chatter die down into whispers, the weight of his choice looming. They made their way back through the cluster of friends, warmth mingling with the cold uncertainty in him. Hey, everyone, Jenna called out, grabbing attention again. We're heading to the hospital. If anyone wants to join, we could use the support. The atmosphere replaced with a hush. John felt their gazes upon him, curiosity, concern, and a hint of hope flickering like the fairy lights outside. He braced himself for the journey ahead, knowing that this was just a step not towards completion, but rather a terrifying unfolding of what lay beneath the surface. John, are you sure? Lucy whispered, the softness in her voice grounding him. I have to be, he replied, feeling the stirrings of resolve flutter within. But as the night deepened, one question lingered: would facing the past be the key to unlocking their future, or would it just unravel everything they were trying to build? The car ride felt endless, each mile leading him closer to an emotional reckoning. John glanced at Jenna, her reflection a reminder of their tangled relationship. Once we get there, he started, but the uncertainty of what to expect held his tongue. And in that silence, as each moment ticked by, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything might change in the blink of an eye. The car rolled to a stop outside the hospital, its fluorescent lights spilling out onto the pavement like spilled paint. John could feel the pulse of anxiety in his veins, an electric current fueling his doubt. He looked over at Jenna and Lucy, both of them sitting quietly, bracing for whatever awaited inside. "Here we go," John murmured, his heart racing. Lucy's hand found his, a reassuring squeeze that ignited a flicker of courage within him. They stepped out of the car, the cool night air biting at his skin, but it couldn't penetrate the warmth of their bond. As they walked through the sliding glass doors, the familiar scent of antiseptic washed over them. It filled John's nose, a stark reminder of the intensity of life and death that lurked within the sterile walls. He hated hospitals, and the thought of facing his mother among the rows of disapproving nurses and worried families twisted his stomach. "Are you ready?" Jenna asked, her voice soft but steady. She hadn't removed her eyes from him, a mix of hope and fear glimmering in their depths. "I guess so," John replied, though every word felt heavy as lead. Within him surged a maelstrom of memories, how the past felt like a shadow always looming, threatening to eclipse the light they were trying so hard to create. They reached the nurse's station, and Jenna asked for the room number. The nurse, with a warm smile, directed them to the left. Lucy walked beside John, her presence calming, urging him to breathe through the swell of emotions. "This is it," she whispered as they approached his mother's room. The door stood slightly ajar, and John could hear the muted sounds of machines humming inside. Each step felt monumental, each breath a battle against the weight of his past resentment. Pushing the door open, John stepped into the room. There lay his mother, frail against the white sheets, her face drawn but her eyes alight with a mix of anticipation and remorse. It struck him, the vulnerability on display, a reflection of the humanity they all shared. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Her gaze flickered up, surprise evident. "John, you came." Her voice was fragile, like ice cracking under no pressure. "I'm here," he affirmed, although all he could feel was the swirling storm inside him. "I am sorry for everything, son," she began, her voice quaking as she spoke. "I made so many mistakes, and I don't expect you to forgive me." John closed the door behind him, shutting out the world, leaving just the three of them enveloped in this moment. "I'm not sure what forgiveness looks like anymore," he admitted. The words tasted raw, but honest, the truth that had been buried deep within him clawing its way to the surface. Lucy stepped forward, her presence a stabilizing force. "We all have our scars. This is about understanding and rebuilding. We want to include you in this, especially as we're starting a family." His mother's eyes widened, and a mixture of emotions played across her face: shock, regret, and, just like that, hope. "A baby?" She hesitated, perhaps for the first time feeling the weight of her choices against a new beginning. "Yes." John swallowed hard. "I want to share this with you. But it will take time and honesty." Her expression softened, a glimmer of love blinking through the clouds of their past. "I don't want to waste this time. I want to know my grandchild," she said, emotion swelling in her voice. "Can we start fresh? Can we find a way to move forward?" A tremor of fear swept through him, and he felt Lucy's hand guiding his, as if she knew he needed the gentle push. "I'm willing to try," John said, and with that, the dam within him broke apart. "I'm scared too," his mother admitted, tears spilling over as she reached out for his hand, a lifeline between their estrangement and the hope that dangled just beyond reach. "Can you forgive me? Can we learn to accept one another again?" The vulnerability of the moment washed over him, pooling in the corners of the room and igniting something anew within him. "I don't have all the answers yet, Mom. But I'm willing to take steps forward." There was something in her eyes, a fierce resolve filling the cracks that time and past mistakes had etched. "Then let us take those steps together," she said, squeezing his hand tightly, sealing their bond anew. In that instant, John felt a weight lift, the heaviness dispersing into a hopeful release. He could see the threads of their lives weaving closer, linking in a way that he had thought irreversibly severed. Outside the room, he knew his friends and family were there, waiting, supportive and encouraging. He wasn't alone. They were all battling their pasts together. And as he turned to look at Lucy, he realized that with every trial they faced, they would continue to forge stronger connections among them all. Hope glimmered, not as a distant possibility, but as a new reality. And as laughter erupted beyond the hospital walls, echoing a flourishing sense of unity, John knew this was just the beginning of a beautiful chapter for him, his sister, their mother, and their growing family. So, dear friends, if you haven't already, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.